The Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Techtown Detroit, Detroit's entrepreneurship hub. Techtown Detroit is a business incubator and accelerator, helping tech startups and local businesses launch and grow. Techtown supports businesses with co-working, office, meeting, and event space. They also connect entrepreneurs to resources and learning and networking events in Detroit. Techtown Detroit, Detroit's entrepreneurship hub. Hey everybody, welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm Craig Fahle. Glad that you have chosen to join us. We are, of course, live on Facebook, but this is also available as a podcast. It's available as a video at deadlinedetroit.com, and we'll have it up probably a little bit tomorrow or so. I think it's typically when we post these, yes. But you'll be able to listen to the audio a little bit later on today or watch live with us right now, and this is a lot better than that meeting that you're supposed to be paying attention to. So put your headphones on, make it look like you're taking notes. Watch us do our thing. Today, Joel Sklarback. Welcome. Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
Exciting week.
Local attorney, and always fun to have you on the program. We appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
Alan Lengel is here as well.
Hello.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nancy Derringer, not with us today.
Having fun on vacation.
Somewhere.
Overseas.
Well, don't invite
Ukraine?
people.
Where?
Oh,
like
yeah.
to know.
Yes.
like to know.
Her address?
She's staycationing right now.
Wait, her home address?
That's right. Anyway, we are getting ready here.
She has a house sitter, though.
That's true.
Does she?
I think so.
Absolutely.
His company? I mean, for staycation? I was confused. All right.
Okay, guys, can we focus. Although it's incredibly hard to focus this week because the news has been coming fast and furious. This has been a very, very strange week. Not a good week if you're President Trump, in my opinion. I don't think he's having a very good week, despite the crowd that showed up at his rally in Dallas last night. Mick Mulvaney yesterday, his chief of staff, in a rare press conference, basically said, hey, yeah, we did hold back the aid to Ukraine on the condition that they investigate the stuff we wanted them to look in. This stuff happens all the time. Get over it, people. He said, get over it.
Yeah. It's completely insane.
Well,
contrary to every
Get over
principle
us
that
breaking
we
the
could
law.
possibly-
That's
exactly.
what we do.
It happens all the time. And I'm thinking to myself, maybe it happens all the time in this administration, but it doesn't happen all the time.
Right.
There's a reason there are rules against this kind of stuff.
Well,
very important ones.
I think there's a reason that so many people are speaking out and so many people internally had so many concerns because it doesn't happen all the time because it's a big deal. Although, I'm just seeing a story in the Washington Post where it says a career State Department official overseeing Ukraine policy told congressional investigators this week he had raised concerns in early 2015 about Joe Biden's son serving on the board, and he was saying, we're trying to convey to the Ukrainians what conflicts of interest are, and here it is, we've got a major conflict of interest. I think it is disturbing that he was serving on the board.
Oh, I don't disagree. I think Joe Biden's going to have a problem with this. Yeah. This is already hurting his campaign. So the desired effect from the Trump people is there. Plant the seed in people's mind that something shady was going on, even if it wasn't. But is there something unethical or improper about, this sort of nepotistic type thing? Yes, there is.
It's happened in all the administrations, but as Mulvaney says, it happens all the time. Yeah, it happens all the time. It doesn't make it right.
Doesn't make it right. That's exactly right. So do not try to create this as the new normal. It's unacceptable.
The best really scenario you can hope for is that it sinks both Biden and
Trump. And I think it very well could.
But I think it is disturbing. I think Joe Biden has not really addressed it in the best way. There's no evidence of anything illegal, but certainly he should say, come out.
There's clearly an appearance of impropriety, if nothing else.
Right.
Assume that everything's fine and completely kosher. Right. The appearance of impropriety is something that matters, right? Especially when you're talking about corruption and talking about government and transparency. Any apparent self-dealing or conflict of interest is concerning.
Right.
Self-dealing. How about the G7 coming to Doral, which is owned by Donald Trump? Okay, normally when we're looking at government corruption cases, right? And we've all been around a little while and have seen a number of scandals. And it may be usually somebody steering a contract towards a buddy or a campaign contributor.
Under cover of night.
Very rarely do you see somebody actually steer a deal to themselves.
And so openly, right? Nothing clandestine, just announcing, hey, it's my club.
And it's the perfect spot for it. Mulvaney yesterday said, hey, once the advanced scouting team came back, they said, this is the perfect place to do this. I said, well, it shouldn't even been considered. It's one of those things that should have been ruled out from the minute. Okay, we can't do this here because regardless, we're not going to make any money off it. No, that's not what the Emoluments Clause says. The Emoluments Clause, you can take $0 from a foreign government for any purpose.
Right. There's going to be payment no matter what, and I don't believe that there's not a profit involved. It's going to be dictated by the Trump organization.
Oh, he's going to lose money on this.
It's absurd. It promotes the brand. It promotes the course. It's an absurdity, and it's blatantly corrupt. It's blatantly wrong, and it's blatantly self-dealing.
Yes.
The idea that he is even present, he himself is present, it means that Secret Service people are there. It means that Secret Service people don't sleep in their car. They don't sleep in a tent. They sleep wherever,
Taxpayer dollars are paying for this.
So they're staying in the hotels that Trump owns. He's making money off of it. There's no way that he's going to lose money off of the deal.
Well, the place is losing money as it is.
Right.
But, okay, here's one thing I know. June in Florida.
Not a place to go.
Not exactly the most pleasant atmosphere.
Slow season.
It's one of those things. You don't have to make a reservation to play golf at noon in June.
No, when it's
in
110
Florida.
degrees outside, no, you typically don't.
Well, I know.
Let them have it up in the UP.
Well, no, they did look at the Grand Hotel.
Yeah.
They looked at Mackinac Island as a possible spot for it, which would be. Seems be easy to secure the world leaders on an island.
Absolutely.
That would solve a lot of problems there. But also there's no relationship there. But the fact that they so openly said, yeah, we should do this at my place, and people can't understand. This is why you divest before you become president of the United States. Right. You're supposed to get rid of those, and so you don't have even the appearance of a conflict of interest.
We've never had a president that I can recall, at least in modern times. I mean, we had presidents who, look, George H.W. Bush had all these connections with these big corporations, and
Dick
George
Cheney
Shultz
and Halliburton.
Dick Cheney and Halliburton, and did they benefit? Yes, but we try to minimize that.
But also, we try to disguise it to an extent. I mean, typically it's disguised. This is blatant. And this is kind of endemic to the whole Trump administration, is that by committing wrongful acts in broad daylight, they somehow believe they're exculpatory. And that's an insane perspective. It's not true. And simply because you have the gall to do what you're doing doesn't mean that it's legal. And that's what I find so disturbing. Well, it's out there. There's no issue about what's going on.
But the attitude about it from Mulvaney yesterday, hey, deal with it. Yeah, no, we will deal with it. We'll deal with it the right way, and I think that's basically going to be continued hearings and continued testimony and subpoenas and investigations that have been bearing some fruit thus far. When you look at the public opinion on removal from office, not just impeachment, but removal from office, it's above 50% in polling. It's leading by about 10 points right now.
And it's growing fast. It's not incremental. There's significant jumps.
I think, I think it's interesting, the Syrian move has suddenly brought some of the Republicans out and said, whoa, what is going on? This man is unstable. What is he doing? He's changing the course of our policy. He's changing our alliances with the snap of a finger without consulting from the experts in the field. And I think it's almost, and then now the G7 thing, I think people are starting to see that this guy is not a president. I remember shortly before the election, Obama said this guy is not fit to be president, and I thought, all right, that might be a little too strong, thing, but clearly he is not fit to be president.
And wasn't going to become more presidential. I mean, wasn't that the Republican? I mean, McConnell would say that when he, assumes the mantle, he'll become more presidential, and then he sends a letter out to Erdogan that is on a second grade level. It's like, what the hell?
I'm going to read this letter. Yeah. A dramatic reading. Coming up on the week that was on Deadline Detroit, because you brought this up, because he thought that this was going to stop Turkey from their goal of this buffer zone they've been trying to create for as long as I can remember. And the Turks and the Kurds have a long-standing animosity towards one another. And so this letter was going to stop it. You know what stopped Turkey's advance? Was having U.S. troops in there.
Correct.
Because they're not going to attack a NATO ally. But as soon as you removed them, what did they do? They came right in. Here's the letter that the president thought was going to keep President Erdogan from doing what he did. Dear Mr. President, let's work out a good deal. You don't want to be responsible for slaughtering thousands of people, and I don't want to be responsible for destroying the Turkish economy, and I will. I've already given you a little sample with respect to Pastor Brunson. Yeah, I'm sure that hurt Turkey a whole lot over that
Devastated.
I have worked hard to solve some of your problems. Don't let the world down. You can make a great deal. General Malzoum is willing to negotiate with you, and he is willing to make concessions that they would never have made in the past. First of all, what concessions were they willing to make? We have no idea. And didn't you just basically do that anyway by letting them roll in?
Correct. The leverage is gone.
And he says, I am confidentially enclosing a copy of his letter to me just received. History will look upon you favorably if you get this done the right and humane way. It will look upon you forever as the devil if good things don't happen. Don't be a tough guy. Don't be a fool.
Don't be a
I'll
devil.
call you later.
I love that.
I
love that. Don't be a tough guy, don't be a fool.
Donald
Greatest
Trump.
way to end a
We
letter.
were just talking about it before we started, and Trump is trying to convey to people and say, hey, we only have like 50 people down on the ground. How could, Turkey wants to go in, they're going in. Sorry, we've got the Kurds there who are our allies. All we
And
have
they're
to
pretty
say
good
is-
fighters.
They're pretty good fighters, and all we have to say is, hey, you go in there, we got the Kurds on the ground, and, he said, and we've got air power.
absolutely.
And we're going to cover them, and your boys aren't coming home. And I could have, he's... And
I dare you to attack an ally.
Mitt Romney.
It wouldn't have happened. I mean, there's not really, I don't think a question about had Trump not made a impulsive decision to remove troops, that we would be in the situation we're in today. In
Well,
Turkey.
Mitt Romney-
And Mitt Romney was saying yesterday, he goes, what is going on? He says that Turkey is the one who's dictating our foreign policy. And you can't tell me, look, if Turkey called Israel and said, we're going into Syria where your troops are, Israel would say, no, you're not. And Turkey would back off. And so if Turkey would back off from Israel, they would back off from the U.S. And it's absurd the way
question is,
he's trying to convey this.
Really, what is the underlying
public.
motivation? I mean, because it's not to secure anything, and it's not to bring people home when you just sent 2,000 troops to Saudi Arabia. So I don't understand what the motive is other than to appease Putin, because that's exactly who you're appeasing.
Well, and by the way, we sent those troops to Saudi Arabia, and of course, he says Saudi Arabia is going to pay for it. So our troops are missionaries now.
that's right. That's absolutely the point. Right.
I hope they're getting a good nosh. That's all.
But that's true. I mean, is that what we become, a mercenary nation?
Yeah,
Is
mercenary.
that-
Excuse me.
But I agree with you. I mean, is that what we're doing now? If you pay for our troops, you can have our troops. If you don't, you don't get them.
No, if you behave nicely on the world stage, we might sell you some of our weaponry, not the most advanced weaponry. That's typically the way these things work. If you're our ally and a good ally.
Jared might need a little money here to take care of some of the properties that are underwater. It is the most disgraceful. There's no bar. The bar is so low.
No, it's shameless is the only
It's
term you can
shameless,
use. But
yeah.
it begs the question. Again, and I ask myself all the time, what is becoming reality? We live in an Orwellian world now. I mean, even Mulvaney.
Yeah.
Walking back a statement that I heard him make.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
you can't
says
walk
this, he
back
goes,
what you said.
I just said this, but
I
what
didn't
I
say
said
it.
wasn't true. And the statement, and it was really sort of kind of a
And then blaming
a
the
bitchy
media?
statement too. Yeah, blaming the media for recording you. I'm
You were
sorry.
at a press conference.
It's not fake news when we have it on tape. People need to understand this. Most of these things. You've been in court cases like, I never said that. Well, here's the tape.
Here's the record. Here's the deposition. Here's the transcript. We have that with Trump with his discussions on the quid pro quo.
Yeah.
We had that with Mulvaney yesterday, an express statement that is unmistakable. And because the backlash is so enormous, you're going to say, well, what I said wasn't true. Or I didn't really say what I really said. It's a frightening, that Orwellian experience to me is I never thought I'd
much.
experience it in my lifetime, and we are.
But these three things coming together, plus the meeting with Pelosi the other day. So there's actually four things. I mean, and there's
Just so
stuff that I
much.
forgot about earlier in the week already. But if you take a look at what's going on with Turkey, what is going on with Mulvaney and his statement yesterday, basically admitting that, yes, we definitely were trying to get Ukraine to help us investigate a
Absolutely
political rival.
was the term he used.
The emolument stuff that's coming out with this G7 meeting. You're starting to see people coming together and realizing that this may be a sinking ship, and the rats are starting to leave. You're seeing people defying the White House and going and testifying anyway.
True.
Answering subpoenas. You're starting to see that. General Mattis at the Alfred E. Smith dinner last night decided that he wanted to take some jabs at the president.
Oh, my God.
My
They
favorite
were-
line was when he just sat there and said, I earned my spurs on the battlefield. The president earned his in a doctor's office. I mean, that's a pretty damning thing for a guy who hugs the flag and says he's great for our military. I'm sorry, the generals, and there was another general that wrote in the New York Times yesterday. Who
A
basically
four-star
said-
general, correct.
Said we are losing our republic.
Which is true.
You have, a couple of other people that have been. These are people who've served multiple presidents. Four-star generals don't have political leanings. They work for the country, and they are saying this dude is taking us on the road to ruin.
Correct.
It's people are going to hear that, and they're going to start to pay
it's
attention.
dangerous.
What's interesting to me is guys like Mattis, McMaster. They are honorable noblemen, And when the United States gives its words to its allies, to the Kurds, that we're going to have your back no matter what because you've sacrificed so much to keep us safe, and then we turn our back on them, it is absolutely demoralizing, I'm sure, to the military. I'm sure that the morale is low. This is not honor. This is the absence of honor, and that's a reflection of Donald Trump, who has an absence of honor.
You know, I think one of the strongest arguments he has for when people talk about what the good he's doing is they point to the unemployment rate as one of his strongest, attributes. And I was reading the other day about Adolf Hitler, who he had a major campaign, and dramatically unemployment was over 50% in Germany.
Yeah.
And he reduced it over the years. And I think they really forced some people to take jobs, and they also took away jobs from the Jews and did not count them on the unemployment rolls. But
They're no longer seeking employment.
right,
No longer available to work.
right. We've got plans for them.
We didn't like the resumes.
And so, it's interesting. I mean, economics have such a strong, for the German people to allow, the rise of a crazy madman. And when you see here
Sounds
that
familiar.
people are, embracing, and they'll say, well, the unemployment rate is under 4%, which is great. But
It's short-term,
Sure.
whatever gains for
Right.
long-term misery, and that's exactly what we're walking into. And we're walking to with our eyes open. That's what's so upsetting.
Look, Bolton already is starting to turn.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't want anything to do with this drug deal,
that is
as
great.
he called the deal with the Ukrainians. And I thought that was pretty telling.
It was.
Again, Mattis last night, he started out with those jokes, and that's what everybody's been playing. But if you read some of the substance of what he actually said about the fracturing of our nation in terms of our political discourse and everything else, he was pretty darn serious that we're in a really, really bad place and that we can turn it around. At some point, though, we need other people who've been in this administration to tell us what actually goes down in there. Tell us the truth. Rick Perry's leaving now. I guarantee you there's some weird stuff that he knows about that he's, he's like, I'm out.
Well, I would say the most decent person in that whole administration has been Mattis. I mean, even when they went around that day and everyone had to say, Mr. President, it's such a great honor
My God,
to work
Emperor.
for you. You're amazing.
Right.
Your
Light has shone down upon me.
Yeah, I think he was one of the only people who did not say that, and I think he was one of the few people in the administration that kept his dignity. Even Kelly, I think, sort of lost his way at some point.
I think Mattis thought it was his job to be a guardrail and to make sure that things like that happened, like in Syria, with the Kurds, wouldn't happen, which is why he left. Right. So there is no governor any longer on this administration. Trump is dictating everything, and that means it's going to be chaotic, impulsive, unexpected, destructive. We won't really be able to appreciate that until time passes. That's what is so horrifying.
As Nancy Pelosi said, all the roads lead to Putin, and I think we still don't have a totally clear picture of that relationship. And I think it's good to have an alliance with Russia if we can, but
Follow the
think
oil and gas money. Simple as
there's
that.
something very disturbing that's going on, that he's carrying out Russia policy. What
about the
Syria?
cybersecurity agreement that I understand came in the last couple that's been being worked on, that we're going to couple with Russia for cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's a great
Honestly,
idea.
That sounds
Right. Russia just says, give us your password and we'll take care of everything.
The bank robber's going to help you figure out, what's going on with the bank? What the hell?
Well, this is so strange to watch all of this happening, though. I mean, I wake up every single day and I start reading the papers. I wake up about 5:30 most days, and I start reading the papers. And, every day I'm like, wow. Okay, that's new. And I just sort of shake my head. And I really am going to starting to take notes of some kind, like bring a notepad in so I can remember all the different crazy stuff that happened in any given week. Because stuff that happened on Monday, we've forgotten about by Friday.
Correct.
Because the level of craziness keeps ratcheting up. But right now, like I said, start watching to see the rats leaving the sinking ship. And those that are going to be loyal to him. But the people who have been appointed by him, I have a feeling that the worm is turning on that. You're not going to have the blind loyalty anymore because people realize they're going to need to get another job someday. They do not want to go down with this dude.
Or they don't want to go to prison. They want to be, they don't want to be investigated. They don't want to be charged.
I'm going to tell you the truth. Here's what happened from my recollection, and that's not going to bode well.
It's been remarkable how much truth has come out, really, in the last several weeks.
But again, truth is in the eye of the beholder to extent in the world that we're living in now. Because when I read what the Republicans are putting out, or certainly what Trump puts out, it's so far removed from the Trump. But yet, it is published to how many? What is 100 million? God only knows. Tweet receivers, Twitter receivers. It's just disturbing as hell.
I watched Fox News, Fox and Friends this morning for a few minutes. You watch the different channels and see the different takes on this kind of stuff. And of course, MSNBC is apoplectic that the world is ending and this guy's the worst person in the world. And Trump is bending over backwards to find ways to justify this behavior and say, look how these crazy Democrats are reacting to this kind of stuff.
Deranged
socialists. Well, no, what did they had on the
little
Chiron yesterday? Talked about Soviet-style impeachment. To which I thought,
I have never seen
Soviet-style impeachment typically was like murdering the guy that was in the seat before,
You're
or maybe
impeached.
some poison that would go somewhere. So there was not, but
there's not a level of outrage.
They actually had that on the scroll at the bottom. Democrats go on Soviet-style impeachment. And I thought to myself, all right, you're reaching now. I mean, Shep Smith walked out. Didn't get to that. Shep Smith walking out of Fox News. What do you think of that?
I thought it was great. I mean, there are, Fox does have some good
the news side
people there. Chris Wallace, kudos to Chris Wallace. I think he's always a stand-up guy, and in honor of his father. But there are a lot of people at that station, including, unfortunately, Britt Hume used to be, and I'm not sure what his association is anymore, but Britt Hume used to be worked for ABC News, and I think he was actually an intern with Jack Anderson before I did that. And so I always had admiration, but when he went to Fox, he would pretend to say the fair and balanced stuff, but he was anything but fair and balanced.
I like Shep Smith a lot. I thought he was great, and I hate to see him go because we need voices like his in that hour or whatever slot he has to at least say something resembling what is actually happening. And he had the courage to do it.
Right.
I'm saddened that he's gone, because I think people who are watching Fox News or watching the channel need to hear that voice to say, hey, what you're being told isn't really so. And we have, what's bizarre about this whole situation is we have empirical evidence. We have the, admissions by the White House, by the president. We have a transcript.
Right.
There really is no issue about the quid pro quo.
Right.
You've admitted to it. And yet I think on Fox News, it's no big deal, doesn't really exist, that his words are misconstrued, no matter how clear they may be. It's weird.
I mean, Sean Hannity, he's an advisor to Trump.
That's great.
And he, the guy does not have an objective bone in his body. Even O'Reilly could sometimes come through and say, "Okay, I see the other side." Sometimes, not very often, but begrudgingly. But Sean Hannity, impossible. I've never seen him once ever do that.
Well, all right, let's get off of this for just a little bit because there are some other things happening in the world. General Motors and the UAW reached an agreement after the longest strike since like 1974 or something like that. So this is one of the lengthier strikes they've had in a long time. They had some stuff to work out. It looks as if the Hamtramck, the Poletown plant, may stay open to make electric vehicles.
Right.
Now, that's not all 4 plants that are being closed. There was going to be 4 closures. Now they're down to 3. Mm-hmm. So I know the UAW wasn't particularly happy about the fact that Lordstown's still going to be shut down, and that may be a snag in getting this contract ratified. But it certainly seems as if the UAW and GM threw in some sweeteners to get people, hey, vote in favor of this. Yeah. There's $11K waiting for you.
Bonus.
That's a nice bonus.
It's hard, when you have people who don't want their plant closed, and you're asking them to ratify a contract.
And you've been out of work, maybe getting some assistance from the union. I mean, that 11,000 is timely.
Yeah.
Well, I've never been on strike before.
I was on strike for 19 months, but
exactly.
I'll tell you, the Detroit News could have had a much smarter approach. They wanted to reduce the workforce. Particularly not so much in the newsroom, but really among truck drivers and some of the Teamsters. They could have done it. They could have done $30 million in buyouts. Instead, they tried to crush the unions. They probably lost a minimum of a $250 million, and they went about it the wrong way. So I mean, if General Motors is trying to say, here, we'll buy you to go away, but when I was out there the very first night at the Hamtramck Detroit plant there. Some of the workers were saying, well, we've got about a month's supply of cars. So General Motors was prepared to go deeper than just a few days strike, and I think they were hoping.
Well, we don't know what the other terms are, though. I mean, I'm curious to know what is the real deal,
right?
Because there were a bunch of issues. So
God
knows.
Like I said, it's looking like not a bad deal. I mean, the pay raises are pretty solid. You got 4% one year, 3% the next. Right. I mean, so there's
all good
some
except
stuff in
for
there,
the
and the creation of jobs. Well, the plant closings.
Plant closing, and then afterwards, I think I think the UAW really has to. I'm so ashamed of the UAW, which I had always great admiration for. I'm so ashamed for.
Yeah, they need to.
The corruption. It was
clean.
not isolated. It was systemic. And they really need to clean house there.
I think that will be the reckoning for them. Okay, you got this contract for us, great, and then I think they're going to make some big changes.
But I mean, they've still got to deal with Chrysler and Ford,
True.
so I mean, it's not over yet. But
No,
when all the negotiations are over, there needs to be a house cleaning there, and some internal investigation or maybe an external investigation.
Well, there are external investigations.
Yeah,
well, the
there are
FBI's doing that.
Well, I
so.
mean that, but I mean just within the union, for
Yeah.
the union to reevaluate itself and say, okay, who needs to go? Who's still the rotten pieces in there? I mean, we saw that in the Kwame administration with the police department. He still had a lot of people in there, and the new people came in and started cleaning house and getting rid of some of Kwame's.
All right, let's move on from that. This is interesting. Michigan Republicans right now introducing a bill to make it easier to carry concealed weapons in the state. They're trying to basically eliminate requirements for pistol training for carrying a concealed pistol. That's something that's been in there. You have to take a class. I kind of like that idea. It's not that inconvenient. A lot of people
like
have done
driver's ed. You don't need to take driver's ed. Just get a car.
You'll figure it out.
See, that's that's the
Safety,
American way, right?
You watch YouTube. Watch YouTube for a day,
But
and then
not just that, though. Here's the
drive a
thing.
car.
The only existing bans on carrying concealed weapons would be in schools, K-12 schools. If you have an existing ban against concealed weapons, it would ease bans on carrying a concealed pistol in a child care center, sporting arena, bar, church, hospital, or college campus.
Sounds well thought out.
You would allow private entities to either deny or allow concealed carry in these locations. Now, so obviously, but is this necessary? Is this something we need to do?
Is this NRA? I'm assuming.
Again, what is the motive for this? It's not Second Amendment rights, obviously.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
again,
John Riley from Oakland Township is the sponsor of the bill, and here's his rationale. And take this for what it's worth. Debunk it if you like, or maybe you agree with it. I don't know. He says, quote, "What we're really doing when we declare a place to be a gun-free zone is informing would-be criminals that this location is where you can safely assume their victims will be defenseless."
he's an idiot.
Right.
I've seen this argument before, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I don't want people armed in schools. If somebody walks into a school or somebody walks into a hospital with a gun, I mean, they may do that, but most of those people aren't going in there going, "Oh, well, this is an easy target, so I'm going to go here." That's not their thinking here.
I'm sorry. The whole gun thing. I did a story a while ago about all the airports where you could carry guns, and there was some guy who did a YouTube video. He walked into the Atlanta airport. He was dropping off his daughter.
That was open carry.
He had open carry, and he had an assault rifle, and people in the airport were freaking out, and they were calling, because and when the officer came up to him and said, "Excuse me, sir," and he said, "I have my rights. You have no right to even question me. I'll file a lawsuit," and stuff like that. I mean, the gun, the NRA, even right now in Washington, they cannot get they can't get a director confirmed for ATF.
Yeah.
The agency that enforces our gun laws, because the NRA isn't happy, and that has got to change.
Well, I also think nobody wants to join this administration right now. I mean, this is not a good time.
Here's a guy
he's got a hiring
appointed.
problem now.
He's not going to get the best and the brightest.
That's right.
But just going back to the argument that we need more people with guns to protect us from people with guns. I don't know how that works, number one. Number two, if somebody isn't trained on how to use a weapon or what to do when there is an emergency, where somebody with a gun is God knows doing what, they're just going to cause more harm. They're not going to solve a problem. They're going to cause more harm.
Right.
My sister Megan is a teacher. I know for a fact I don't want her carrying a weapon.
Well,
She's a wonderful person, but she doesn't want that either. I mean,
logically, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, especially if again you're going to have legislation that says you don't need any training. Here's your weapon.
Right.
Well,
and bars and guns, they'll go well together.
Bars are sporting events.
Alcohol and guns. I like that.
I mean,
it's like the Old West. Come on, it's a romantic time.
It doesn't make it logically doesn't flow.
I interviewed for that story that I did. I interviewed the former head of security at the Tel Aviv airport. And I said, is it a good idea that other people have guns at the airport? He says, no, it's terrible. He says, you need to have people who are trained
Correct.
who have the guns. He says, you don't need like 9 people shooting at each other, no one knowing who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. The guy who walked in with the assault rifle in Atlanta airport, he assumes he's a good guy. Everyone else is freaking out and saying he must be a bad guy.
At least with open carry, you know what you're dealing with. I mean, I just want to know what it's going to take for us to basically stop this.
It's going to be a whole much thoughts and prayers we're going to hear a million times.
What
I
do they
don't
call
think
it?
it's going to happen.
I mean, when we had the shooting at the elementary school in Connecticut, I thought that
was a
is gonna
watershed.
That's going to be a turning point. People can't ignore it, but it doesn't matter if it's children, if it's the elderly.
It would matter if you had an administration, a president who thought it did matter and wanted to take some
Well,
slight
Obama
action.
thought it. Obama thought it mattered.
They
and
might do
did.
it, but they couldn't even get background checks through. I mean, even if people want it, it's just not
The
happening.
NRA is really, they have made it so easy to acquire guns, to drive down the road, walk into a department store, whatever, and buy an assault rifle. And it's insane.
It
All
is.
right. Well, we'll see if this bill goes anywhere. I have this strange
doubt it.
idea that it will be vetoed by Governor Whitmer if it reaches her desk.
Right.
I have a feeling that'll happen, and I know they don't have a way to override that veto. But still, the fact that it's being discussed is one of those things.
And the reason given is just so absurd.
Well, and
I mean,
again,
really.
guns and bars. It's
Honestly,
just
you
such
think
a
that's a great
horrible
idea?
I think
don't.
we should see more guns in bars. I think it would just be more fun.
How many shots are you going to take, so to speak, at a
You
bar?
walk in with your bulletproof vest on,
There you go. It's like, I'll take a shot. Oh, didn't
Tequila,
mean that kind. All right, so
Fuck, it's
we got to
nuts.
wrap up. We got to wrap up, and I want to get to this because the Lions. We had some fun with the Lions this past weekend. On Monday Night Football, they, of course, lost to the Packers. They shouldn't have been in a position to have the refs lose the
I
game.
agree.
But at the same time, the refs did not help the Detroit Lions once again. New and creative ways to lose games.
That's the beauty of watching the Lions. It is. It's the beauty of the loss. It's the sublime beauty and the idyllic loss, to find something of value
what
in
is-
that.
you know,
'Cause it's
you-
something
the
new
rest-
every time.
The rest of the country's like, wow, maybe this does happen to the Lions more often. I mean,
Well,
they're
is
starting
it-
to come to that realization, I think.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and what is it? Is it Detroit that people hate? The
William
poor
Clay Ford must have
working
done
class.
something.
Do they hate poor working class? Is there underlying racism there that they hate? It's
I think
black
it's just
city.
that the Lions have been such an awful organization for my lifetime, 60 years. I mean, it's a long, they've been such an awful organization that this is what happens when you have the Packers, not an awful organization. The Lions, you're not going to get those calls, and it could be an unconscious thing. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, but look, the Lions have also. I mean, the Fords have contributed so much to the NFL financially through their commercials.
But they've been
and stuff.
easy owners. They don't cause a problem. They don't cause a stir. They're I mean, has Martha Ford complained about, I can't believe he got jobbed? No. I mean, I've
Well,
heard,
we don't know.
Well, but
She's
here's why
a
they're not
tough
going to say
woman.
anything. Think about this. He bought the team for what, $6 million or something like that back in 1962 or whenever he bought the team. The team's worth $1 billion
Right.
now.
Right.
So that's the best investment anybody's ever made is
agree.
buying an early NFL franchise. It made
Right.
Ralph Wilson.
A lot of
rich.
franchises.
But you're right. They
Even
never,
when they're losing money, they're making money.
They
'cause
never should have been in the position
their
that they
value.
were in. I mean, the mistakes that they made, the tight end drops a pass in the end zone, that's a touchdown. The 12 men on the field is an absurdity. What are you doing? And I'm telling you, what I see about the Lions, and I love Stafford, but he loses series. In the third quarter, typically, he disappears for a period of time. There's some systemic issues with that team that still have to be addressed.
Well, I think they're better than their record shows right now. I think they have the capability of playing some pretty good football.
They
if
haven't
they don't
been
win this
blown
weekend,
out.
they're in deep trouble. But
Right.
if they win this weekend,
they're back. No, I agree. Then the conference is up for grabs. The North is up for grabs. There's
and
a lot
they
to
haven't
do.
been blown out.
No, they have not.
Any of the games. So,
Now,
I mean,
one other thing that's going on, I know you're a baseball fan. I'm a baseball fan. And looks like we're going to have an Astros Nationals World Series, which means we're going to have a bunch of ex-Tiger pitchers
Right.
going after
Facing
each other.
off.
we got
Verlander, Scherzer,
Sandoval.
and
Anibal
Sanchez.
Sanchez, which is
Sanchez,
amazing, who's made an amazing return after he looked like he was horrible when he left the Tigers. I thought this guy's career is over, and somehow he's doing really well.
Well,
again.
and so it's going to pain me to see Game 1 Scherzer versus Verlander. I mean, 'cause I don't know if that's the way it's going to line up. We got to check the stuff, but
it's hard to imagine that we had that pitching. David Price,
Porcello, Verlander, Scherzer,
and Pfister. I mean, we had 5 amazing pitchers at once, and we still
they came close.
Terrible
They
relievers.
came close, but that's right.
I'm happy for JV.
Yeah.
He's a class act all the way.
His
man.
life looks like it's okay.
I was watching.
It's like Tom Brady. It's like how charmed can you be?
I was watching him last night, and he's giving everyone a high five after the game.
Just a good guy. And
It looks like his life is going just fine.
Could be better.
Exactly. All right, gentlemen, I appreciate it very much. Joel, thank you for coming in and doing it. Alan, thank you very much as well. And thanks all of you for watching. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering our broadcast.
Hey, Michael.
Don't forget, Deadline TV, we've got a new Detroit Digest up there. These guys are consuming a 2-pound burger from Cutter's. The thing looks amazing. I know.
It was a
will
piece
kill
of
you,
art.
but it looks good. And there's a new
piece of
zip
art.
up as well that we put up just this morning. I believe the zip went up, or last night.
Late last night.
It's funny. Violet does a great job on that every week. We enjoy
it's
it.
It's a good episode.
It's a good episode. I'm testing out some of my comedy writing skills.
That's right.
I'm not that funny, but I work at it.
They were good lines.
Well.
Alan is pretty funny. Anyway. All right. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate it. Thanks to Samaritas and Techtown as well for sponsoring this show. I certainly appreciate their help. And, of course, for helping us out here at Deadline Detroit. We will see you next week. Got some cool stuff coming up on the show, and I hope you check it out. Thanks.
Have a good weekend.
And drive home safely.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
Hey, the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible by Samaritas, which is the state's largest private foster care and adoption agency. But they do a heck of a lot more than that. They've been serving homeless families, persons with disabilities, abused and trafficked women. They're also one of the largest resettlement agencies in the state. They provide market rate and affordable housing for seniors and HUD housing for families. And they also have skilled nursing, memory care, and rehab communities in Grand Rapids, Cadillac, and Saginaw. Samaritas, thanks for their support. Great organization doing great stuff all around the state.